You're swiping through your feed, and suddenly it hits you, a massive, bold post claiming Jesus never existed. 2 swipes later, someone else insists the Bible has been completely rewritten and corrupted. When you see those viral claims, what do? Do you feel a knot in your stomach? Do you quickly scroll past it? Or do you actually pause and check if those claims hold up? Today, we are going to treat those internet rumors exactly like what they are, claims that need a serious fact check. Responding to these doubts doesn't have to feel like making an excuse. Think of it more like being a detective. You're tracking down clues, examining the history, and seeing if the foundations of your faith actually hold up under pressure. God gave us a brain for a reason. When our beliefs are challenged, investigating those doubts with real evidence is exactly what we are supposed to do. Let's start with fact check number 1. The very popular internet rumor that Jesus is just a copied myth and never actually lived. To figure out if this is true, we aren't even going to open the Bible. We are going to build our case using only hostile witnesses, people who lived back then and actually hated the early Christians. Our first witness is Cornelius Tacitus. He was one of the most prominent historians of the Roman Empire, and he made it very clear he had no love for the Christian movement. But in his official Roman records, Tacitus documented something highly specific. He wrote down that a man named Jesus suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Emperor Tiberius, and that the execution was ordered by a governor named Pontius Pilate. For a long time, skeptics wondered if Pilate even existed. Then archaeologists dug up this exact block of limestone. Right there, carved into the rock, is the name Pilate, confirming the Roman governor who ordered the crucifixion was a real, breathing figure in history. We also have a second hostile witness, the Jewish historian Josephus. Even though he wasn't a follower, his historical records confirm that Jesus drew large crowds, performed unusual feats, and was condemned to the cross by Roman leaders. Because the bitterest enemies of the early Christians officially documented a man named Jesus who was crucified by a verified Roman governor, the rumor that he is a made-up myth completely falls apart. Let's move to fact check number 2, the claim that the Bible is basically a giant game of telephone, copied by hand so many times over centuries that the original message is completely lost. To test this, we use the science of manuscript tracing. It's a painstaking process of following a single piece of text all the way back through history to its original source. When we trace the Old Testament, we run into the ancient Jewish scribes, known as the Masoretes. They followed an incredibly strict set of rules to prevent mistakes. They had to wash themselves entirely before writing God's name. They counted every single letter on a scroll. And if a page had even a handful of tiny mistakes, they would bury it in the ground so it could never be read. But for hundreds of years, critics pointed out a problem. They argued there was no physical proof that the Old Testament hadn't drifted or changed over the thousands of years before our earliest known copies. That argument hit a wall in 1947. A young shepherd boy was wandering near these desert caves at Qumran, and he stumbled onto a discovery that answered those critics directly. He found the Dead Sea Scrolls. This photograph shows one of those unrolled manuscripts, a text a full 1,000 years older than any Hebrew copy previously known. Researchers compared this 1,000-year-old scroll to modern Hebrew text. They matched. The words were practically identical. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls proves that the scribes' obsessive counting and washing actually worked. The telephone game theory is thoroughly busted. That brings us to fact check number 3, and it's usually the toughest one to swallow. The claim that the God of the Old Testament is a cruel and violent warlord. Imagine reading a single angry text message on a friend's phone without knowing the massive argument that started it. Reading ancient history with modern eyes creates the exact same misunderstanding. Look at the ancient Middle East. Massive, expanding empires worship terrifying gods of war, constantly pressing in on the Israelites. Conflicts were God versus God. If your nation was conquered, the world believed your God was weak and useless. For the Israelites, this was a matter of pure survival. If they were wiped out, their faith died with them. To prevent that, God spoke a language of strength, the only language that the rough ancient world respected, to protect his people from being erased. If that small group of people had been absorbed or destroyed, the singular promise they carried for the rest of humanity would have vanished. They were the single, vital thread through which a Savior named Jesus was meant to enter the world. Viewing it through their eyes changes the perspective. The struggles recorded in the Old Testament show a God who refused to let the light of his promise be snuffed out before it could reach the entire world. For 2,000 years, the smartest skeptics, philosophers, and critics have thrown every argument, doubt, and theory they have at the Bible. Yet despite centuries of intense scrutiny, the historical, archaeological, and textual facts continually prove that it is reliable. There is a major misconception out there that having doubts or asking tough questions about history makes you a bad Christian. Actually, asking questions is the exact opposite. It's the very first step toward discovering how deep, logical, and solid your faith really is. So the next time a viral video tries to tear down your faith in 30 seconds, don't panic. Put on your detective hat, check the receipts, and trust that the truth has absolutely nothing to hide.